I'm still working on Total Forgiveness, the series that I started. Today's a little bit different. We're going to take a little bit of a sidetrack. It connects with total forgiveness, but you see as time goes on. Let me just start with a word prayer. Father, we just thank you for your word, how poignant it is. And Lord, we thank you that you've been very clear in it about certain things in certain ways that we should act, think, and live. And I pray, Father, that you would season my words and Lord, that your Spirit would direct them to our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. Why is it so easy for us to see flaws in other people? So often we are able to see flaws in others really quickly. Why is that? I believe it's because so often we have those same flaws. And we're blind to them. But we see them so clearly in someone else. We see jealousy in somebody, and we're quick to point it out, yet we're clueless that we might have jealousy. Or we point out anger in somebody. And we might even point it out in an angry way. Letting them know, you're so angry. A man scolded his wife for buying a $50 shirt. And as he was saying it, he paid his $125 lunch bill. In an argument, sometimes you yell and you scream while you point out to your spouse that it bothers you that they yell and scream at the kids. Your boss calls you into the office and he gets in at 10 and he's going to reprimand you for your tardiness because work started at 9. We're so often blind to our own shortcomings, yet we see it vividly in others. Why is that? Maybe because we have this unique ability to rationalize and justify our own shortcomings. Well, down deep, we kind of know they're there, but it allows us this uncanny ability to detect it quickly in someone else. And we, as I said before, sometimes engage our own anger in pointing these things out in others. Like a woman who's speeding in 65 and 55 mile an hour a road, and she feels the need to criticize the guy who passes her going 75. Or the guy who pays his bill and then realized they forgot to charge him for the extra appetizer because it was $18. So he walks away feeling good. And then he rants and raves at the gas station guy because he gets mixed up and shorts the guy a couple bucks. We all want mercy and grace for ourselves and justice from others. Why is it always easy for us to pass judgment on others, but not ourselves? And so that's what we're talking about today, judging. And I have a story I want to read that kind of goes along with this, 2 Samuel 12, 1-7. It's about King David and the prophet Nathan. So the Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, there were 2 men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David burned with anger against the man. And he said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man that did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. And then Nathan said to David, you are the man. Some of you remember the story. David had committed sin with Bathsheba. He had been an adulterer. He had been a murderer. He was that man. And it said David's heart was cut to the quick because that was him. Jesus was very clear in Matthew 7, 1 to 2. He said, and he tells us, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. I don't know about you, that's scary a little bit. Especially when we know how we judge in our own hearts, in our own minds. And he says the way that you judge is going to be measured back to you. Ouch. The word judge comes from a Greek word, krino, which basically means to make a distinction. And making a distinction between two things is good, right? I mean, we have to do that. A couple of years ago, I was at a gas station. I bought a cup of coffee in the morning, gave the guy a 20, and he gave me a $10 bill back. And it had been all wrapped up and folded about 1,000,000 times, but big deal. It was a $10 bill. So I just took it and put it in my pocket and didn't think anything of it. Next day, I'm getting another cup of coffee at another gas station. I hand him the $10 bill. The guy goes like this, gets up to the light, takes out a marker, and marks the bill, and he goes, this is fake. Gives me a $10 bill back. And I said, are you kidding me? How do you know that? And he goes, we're trained to do that. And he said, but I put the marker on there. See, it's supposed to turn a different color. He goes, this is a fake, this is counterfeit. And I said, well, what do I do about that? And he goes, well, what I would recommend is go back to the gas station where you got the $10 bill from, and let him know you got the $10 bill. And if he doesn't do anything about it, you can always go to the cops. But if you go to the cops, understand they're going to ask you, where did you get this $10 bill? And the gas station guy's not going to be very happy about that. So I took my chance. I went back to the gas station. I showed him the $10 bill, and he looked at it, and he marked it the same way the other guy did. And he said, okay, what time did you come in here? And he kind of gave me some questions, and I answered them. And he said, okay, let me reimburse you. And he gave me another $10 bill. The guy made a judgment, a distinction between the real thing and the false thing. And that's a good thing to do, right? And the guy that I got the counterfeit from, he made a distinction. He made a distinction between, if he doesn't reimburse me the $10, he knows I'm going to go to the police department, and that's going to be bad for his business. So he made a distinction between two things, and that's a good thing. Tony, how long were you a policeman for?
36 years.
36 years. And I'll bet there's a whole lot of times that you had to make snap judgments. So it's good to be able to make a judgment. But what we're talking about here is not judgments between this or that or a fake and something real. What we're talking about is unfair criticisms. In 1 Corinthians 2:13, it says, the spiritual man makes judgments about all things. Being discriminate is prudent and it's wise. And we're told to be wise and to make wise judgments. Righteous judgments. But what Jesus was speaking about in Matthew was judging people and making unfair, critical judgments. Listen, the devil loves to play God. That's been his desire from the beginning. He wanted to be like God. So he loves to play God, and he's trying to get us to buy into his way of thinking. And we do. We end up playing God. Now, Satan got tossed out of heaven for doing that. How do you think God feels about it? Not too good. But we try to play God when we make a judgment, a critical judgment of someone else. We're playing God. We're told not to judge. But we still do. Jesus said in Matthew 5:7, he said, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Paul said in Philippians 4:5, let your gentleness be evident to all. The word gentleness there, it means to be gracious. So when you could throw the book at someone, but opt instead to show mercy. That's being gracious. Judging is the opposite of that. Again, we are not told to not make judgments, to ignore what's wrong. The point is, God doesn't want us to make unfair or not call for criticisms of another person. R.T. Kendall has an acrostic for when we're tempted to open up our mouths and say something to someone else and make a judgment. And his acrostic is N-E-E-D, need. N. N stands for necessary. Necessary. Is it necessary for me to say this to the person? Is it necessary to say this? Sometimes things are true, and we could say them because they're true. But really, is it necessary? A kid, is on the basketball court, and when I was a coach, and if he makes a mistake, and he knows he made a mistake, is it necessary for me to call a timeout and point that out to him? No, it's not necessary. He knows he blew it. But we tend to do that. N, is it necessary? E, encourage. Encourage. Will this encourage them? Will it make them feel better? We're told to encourage one another, to lift one another up. And that gets me to the next E, edify. Edify. Will it edify? Will what I say build them up, make them stronger, or will it rip them down? And D, dignity. Will it dignify that person? Jesus treated others with a sense of dignity always. As should we. You know, we all go through our daily lives and we make decisions, we make judgments. But these judgments so often end up making distinctions about other people's motives, personalities, hearts, which we don't necessarily have a clear understanding of, so we unfairly criticize them, we judge them. And that's not being gracious, that's being wrong. There are a lot of things that we need to understand about judging, wrong judging. Number one, judging other people is almost always counterproductive. We often think, hey, I need to straighten this person out, I need to get, I need to come down on their attitude. And how does that usually work out? Usually it has the opposite effect, doesn't it? I mean, they go away hurt, and now all of a sudden, you have another issue to deal with. You're going to have to go back and apologize to them for the careless word that you let out of your mouth. Judging other people is almost always counterproductive. Number two, judging others causes us to be judged in the same way. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. That's what Jesus said in Luke 6:37. Now, interesting, it's not a suggestion. It's a promise. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. He's not suggesting it. He's promising you that's what's going to happen. In Matthew, it's a bit different. This is what he says in Matthew has it recorded. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. Okay, that's not a promise, that's a warning. So he gives us a promise and a warning. So it follows, you don't want to be criticized, then don't criticize others. You don't want to be judged, don't judge others. And I don't like to be judged. Do you? It hurts. It's painful, especially when it's not true. But sometimes it even hurts more when they're right. Either way, and I don't know about you, either way, rarely does it build me up. And Jesus' warning here is motivating us to not judge, so that we won't be judged in the same way that we judge others. It's speaking to our self-interest. Our self-interest, just like forgiving. We don't want to be criticized or judged. We want to be forgiven. So Jesus is telling us in a degree that we forgive and don't criticize and judge, it'll be given back to us. It's a pragmatic reason for us not to be judged, not to judge. And it's very simple. If you don't like to be judged, then stop judging others. The guy by the name of Somerset Maugham, and he said, when people ask for criticism, they really want praise. And that's the truth, isn't it? That any criticism that we give somebody, no matter how true, however necessary, it always hurts. Sometimes little, sometimes a lot. It's so easy for us to point the finger. It's so easy for us to criticize. You don't have to be educated to do it. You don't have to take a class to do it. No lessons needed. We all do it. We do it naturally. Some people feel like they have the right to point the finger, especially if they have a little spiritual knowledge. Now, sometimes a little spiritual knowledge is a bad thing. R.T. Kendall, he points out that the true test of spirituality is being able not to point the finger. Very interesting. It's the exact phrase that Isaiah used so long ago. In Isaiah 58, 9-10, this is what he says. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with a pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. Think about it. If people could control their tongues and be free from criticism and judging, I wonder how much grief would be avoided. How many conflicts would be avoided? How many people's attitudes would be changed? So Jesus tells us very simply, very clearly, very directly, if you don't want to be judged, then don't judge. If you don't want that kind of environment to live in, then stop pointing the finger. Listen to these verses. These verses are for three separate people. Colossians 4:6, let your conversation always be filled with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Now, we always thought that verse was talking about defending the gospel, so we don't have to answer and give a defense of our gospel. No, how to answer everyone with grace, with encouraging words, not with criticism and judgment and anger. 1 Peter 3:9, do not repay evil for evil or insult for insult, but with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. We're blessed when we answer with gentleness. There's a blessing that's there. You know, that kind of gracious talk comes back to us. We receive a blessing. Jesus, the last one, Matthew 12:36, he gave a teaching and he said this, but I tell you that men will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. Let me read that again. But I tell you that men will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. That's pretty scary, isn't it? I mean, those words of Jesus make me want to shut my mouth for good. The third thing that we need to understand about judging is when we judge and criticize others, we will have to give an account of our careless words to God himself. R.T. Kendall said, uncalled for criticism usually creates a defensive reaction in the other person, and that leads to a countercharge. And I know it's true of me, and here's what I mean. Dave, you did this. You said that. I did not. I know what I said, and I'm always only defending myself from you, for what you did to me, for what you said to me. I didn't do anything to you. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No. You get wrong. That's the way it goes. I'm defensive, they're defensive. Why? Because we were making judgments of each other. You know, where's the seasoned salt? Where's the productive conversation? Do we get a blessing from that kind of conversation? Does it edify and build us up? Today's English version in Matthew 7:1 is translated like this: do not judge others so that God will not judge you. And that's Jesus' teaching, and what we just read a second ago in 12:36, Matthew 12:36, that's what he's teaching, is that we judge, and when we make a judgment on other people, that's the way God is going to judge us. He's going to hold us accountable. And that's because he's the real judge. He doesn't want us to take that avenue. Four, God motivates us not to judge by self-interest. Again, we're motivated by self-interest. We don't want to be judged by God, so we don't do it to others. It grieves the Holy Spirit when we make judgments on others. So God, when we do that, God stands back and he says, okay, you want to take my job? Knock yourself out. And we do. Our thinking gets all messed up because you see, now we're on our own. Now we don't have the Holy Spirit guiding us. And we're on our own, and our thinking gets all messed up, and we say things, and we begin to think dark and hurtful things. Words pour out of our mouths because now we're controlling ourselves. The Holy Spirit is not doing it, and we get angry, and we utter careless, critical words. And when they come out, we can't hold them back in. When they come out, and then they're out there. James lets us in on what happens when we don't control our tongue. Listen, James 3:6. The tongue also is a fire, a whole world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, sets the whole course of his life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. So to put it simply, all hell breaks loose when we don't learn to control our tongues. And whatever comes out of our mouths stems from our thinking, and our thinking stems from our heart, because out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So judging, critical, speaking careless words, they come from our heart. So this is a real heart issue. Godliness means being like God. And there are certain aspects of God's character we're told to imitate. Be merciful, be holy, forgive, extend grace. But there's one area is exclusively his, and that's judging. That's his territory, and no passing and no trespassing is allowed. And if we get foolish enough to point the finger and judge others with uncalled for criticism, we need to remember a few things. Listen. God is listening. He knows all about us. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And he is ruthlessly fair. God knows the truth about us. Hebrews 4:13 said that nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him whom we must give account. R.T. Kendall gave a great illustration. He said this: how would you like it if, as you were pointing the finger at someone else, an angel from heaven showed up and said, stop, here's what I know about you, and then revealed your secret sins to the person you were judging? Now, God isn't going to do that to us. But I wonder if God just shakes his head at times in disappointment and says, how can he talk like that? Doesn't he realize I know all about him? King David forgot all about his sins until Nathan woke him up. Sometimes we forget about all our sins where we have been forgiven. And it makes it easier for us to point the finger at someone else. Now, God is gracious to us. And yes, He's forgiven us. But when we start to tread on His territory, He has His ways of humbling us. Sometimes we say in judging of another person, I'd never do that. Or, I'd never say that. Or, I'd never act that way. And God has a way of exposing us when we think there's no way that could ever be us. And I say God is ruthlessly fair. Look at the news every day. Men and women that probably thought that would never be me. And now they're in the news because of some scandal. Because their sin has been exposed. It's interesting. Pride and self-righteousness are dangerous things, and they're often found in us when we start judging and pointing the finger at others. And what is the famous saying about pride? Pride comes before the fall. Romans 4:10, it says, "You then, why do you judge your brother or look down on your brother? For we all must stand before God's judgment seat." 2 Corinthians 5:10 says, "For we all must appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each may receive what is due him for the things done among the body, whether good or bad." It's not enough. If that's not enough to cause us to refrain from judging, I don't know what will. Now, I used to think from those verses that means that we're going to have a big, huge room, and He's going to call me forward, and He's going to, put on a big screen all the things that I've done wrong, and it's not like that. God's not going to reveal all of our sins to everybody because He's forgiven them, but He is going to hold us accountable. Hold us accountable for what we've done, for what we've said. And isn't it interesting, because most of the times when He talks about we're held accountable, it's for the careless words, it's for the things that we say, the judgments that we make. The fifth thing that I have down here is God delights in humility and hates pride. God doesn't delight to judge us in order to punish us. After all, He loves us. He's a good God. He's a good God. And He is on the side of the underdog. And He blesses the humble. But He is not a fan of prideful people. Prideful people are prone to judge. James 4:10 says, "Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up." Proverbs 11:12, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom." Philippians 2:3, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourself." Ephesians 4:2, "Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love." The Bible is full of passages about the importance of us being humble. Humility doesn't say, "That will never be me." But rather, "But for the grace of God, there go I." Each of us here, we are capable of horrible sins. Yeah, we're the most heinous. And we're put in the right situation at the right moment. Never say never. Because it could be you, and but the grace of God, there I go. 1 Corinthians 11:21, it says this, "But if we judged ourselves, we would not come under judgment." 2 Corinthians 13:5 tells us to examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Now, there are times when we need to make judgments about things. We do it every day. And we're told that those who are spiritual are to help their brother or sister get the speck out of their eye. And we'll talk about that next week, because there are times where we have to make judgments and we have to speak. But first, we need to make sure that we don't have a plank in our own eye. We have to get in the habit of examining ourselves first before we make judgments, and especially before we point a finger. Let me close with Jesus' words to us again. Matthew 7:1-2. Do not judge, or you will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Because of Jesus facing the cross, you and I, we will never be judged for our sins. And I'm so thankful for that. Because I have so many. But they've been forgiven. And as a result, we don't have to face the consequences of it. And so Jesus is asking something very simple of us. Don't judge. Let the Father take care of the judging. You just go in love. You build up your brothers and sisters. When you're tempted to point the finger, don't. Because in the same manner you do, it's going to be judged back on you. That's powerful words. I don't want to be judged by God for the things I do. I don't want to be judged by other people. It hurts. So we need to work hard at not being judgmental people. And instead, be gracious people. Where our conversation is seasoned with salt. Where it edifies and dignifies and builds somebody else up, encourages them. And we can do that because of Him. We can be that kind of person because of the power of the Holy Spirit that resides in us. But we need to surrender our tongues and our thinking to Christ. And we need to get out of His way and stop trying to take His job because He's the judge. Let me close in a word of prayer, and then a gentleman, Randy, can we come up and distribute the elements and we'll share the communion together. Father, just thank you for your word. And Father, how clear you are that we're not to judge, that we are not to be unfairly critical of others. And I just, Lord, as we march through this life, I just pray that you would bring it to mind. And when we're tempted to point the finger, Father, I pray that you would bring to mind these verses, these promises, these words. In Jesus' name.